Chapter 64. On an attic windowsill, which by then was about as dusty as a literal Sahara, Lee Cherie would set the cigarettes. Then she'd kneel so that the pack was at eye level, pyramids on the horizon. Majestic, timeless, enigmatically powerful, the pyramids pulled at her until in a semi-trance she'd strike out across the open sands, chanting the pyramid names. Tiahuanacu and Giza, Seneferu and Cheops, Titi, Pepi and La Huaca de la Luna, Zoser, Kaaba and Amenamenes, Neferikari and Uxmal and Chichen Itza, on Chefren, on Unis, on Donner, on Blitzen, now Dancer, now Prancer, now Sesostris the Second. From a distance, the pyramids gave the impression of being sleek and well preserved, but up close, they were as ravaged by time and despoilers as Julieta. The capstones and a dozen or more courses had been removed from their apexes, and the entire facing of Tura limestone, with the exception of some sections near the base, had been stripped from the triangular facades. Tunnels had been bored into their sides by treasure hunters, while enterprising builders had hauled off random stones to shore up their bridges and domiciles. Up close, the pyramids were cakes that had been found out by freeloaders. It saddened Lee Cherie to think that there was not one pyramid on Earth that had not been gnawed. "I can't look at a pyramid without feeling like Perry Mason," said Lee Cherie, meaning that, like most people, the mere sight of those immense structures set her to popping questions like a prosecuting attorney on diet pills and beer. How were they constructed? Why were they constructed? Who constructed them? What is their strange appeal to the human psyche? The pyramids of Egypt were said by the experts to be tombs. The pyramids of Peru, Mexico, and Central America were said to have been temples. As for the pyramids of China, Cambodia, Collinsville, Illinois, archaeologists were reluctant to guess. And as for the four pyramidal structures photographed by Mariner 9 on its flyby of Mars, most scientists would just as soon forget them. Pyramidologists thought that in addition to their functions as temples or tombs, the pyramids also served as solar and lunar observatories. With the increasing evidence of pyramid power, that force that apparently accumulates inside the pyramidal cavity, a force that under the right conditions has the proven ability to regenerate both organic and inorganic matter, there was a modern trend to regard the pyramids as collectors or amplifiers of energy. "It seems to me," said Lee Cherie, "that whether a pyramid was built over a period of decades by hundreds of thousands of laborers using primitive engineering equipment like wooden levers and ramps and sledges and stuff like that, or in a few months by spacemen with laser beams, in neither instance would they have gone to such trouble to make a 6-million-ton device that did nothing but sharpen razor blades and preserve fruit. Further, it seemed to the pyramid-gazing princess that since the skills and sciences used by the pyramid builders were virtually identical, as were their finished products, that the motive for their reconstruction must have been the same. Moreover, since the construction required highly advanced mathematical and astronomical calculations, some of which were clearly beyond the capabilities of those ancient civilizations, and since the civilizations were separated by thousands of miles and hundreds of years, and since no records were left that referred to the methods or purpose of construction, then unknown outsiders must have been behind them. Could those outsiders have been the legendary Redbeards? And could the Redbeards have hailed from Argon? Was there even such a planet? Or was Argon a room behind an occult bookstore in Los Angeles? Suppose there had been a number of Argonian colonies around the ancient world, and that in each colony pyramids were erected. What would have motivated Argon to endow Earthlings with pyramids and with the scientific knowledge and near impossible mastery of masonry that their construction required? Had there been a master plan? Was it still operative? What, if anything, did red hair have to do with it? And why is it nobody knows what the hell a pyramid is doing on the American dollar bill? For that matter, what are pyramids doing on a pack of modern-day cigarettes manufactured from a blend of American and Turkish tobaccos? Whenever she reached that point in her questioning, Lee Cherie gave up. Bernard would probably have several ideas, she said once. I guess I'm just a dunce. Whereupon it occurred to her that a dunce cap is shaped like a... That sent her back to the pyramids again. Chapter 65. She had pyramids on the brain, like a tumor. After one too many mornings of waking up with her mind on stone monuments instead of outlaw flesh, she dispatched Julietta to the Richmond Beach branch of the King County Public Library to pick up books on the history of package design. It wasn't strictly kosher. A book in the attic. But in the last quarter of the 20th century, what was? The woodpecker himself had taught her that laws were like buttons, meant to be undone when the moment was ripe. And if you can't break your own rules, whose can you break? Although Julietta donned a dress to go to the library, she continued to carry her picket sign, not that anyone could read it. Chuck, who'd been drafted to do some minimal housework during the strike, dropped his mop and followed her. He must have known he was behind her. She must have known he was behind her, because every block or two she'd look over her shoulder and yell, "Scab!" in her inelegant tongue. Why Julietta was bringing the sequestered princess books on package design was beyond Chuck's comprehension, but he was to dutifully report the matter to the CIA. While Chuck was tailgating Julietta through the library stacks, a nondescript panel truck sped up the bramble-bordered lane to the palace, intrigue hanging out of both windows. Two foreign-looking men emerged. They wore hats and long, dark raincoats, though it was a sunny day in mid-September. The men let themselves in without knocking. Stepping over mop, pail, broom, and piles of newspaper, kicking aside dust balls, chihuahua droppings, and occasional poker chip, they made their way straight to Tilly and Max. Chapter 66. Later that day, when there came a rapping at the attic door, Lee Cherie opened it without hesitation. She was expecting Julietta. Instead, there stood her father, his noisy heart rapping upon a door of a different essence. The king was exceedingly flustered. Initially, Lee Cherie attributed his embarrassment to the fact that he had violated her sanctuary, after not setting eyes on her in 5 months. Then she realized that she was nude. Due to the heat in the airless attic, her nipples were studded with opals of perspiration, and her pubic hair was damp and swept back from her labia, which glistened as if they'd been recently entertained. Unless shaven, the peach clam scarcely could have been more exposed. "Excuse me," she said. She pulled on a t-shirt and panties. "Oh, I'm getting used to it. First Julietta, now you. I trust the queen isn't next." "Oh, spaghetti-o," claimed the princess. They both laughed. "You know that visitors aren't allowed." "Sorry, dear. Julietta was about to deliver you this volume. I thought I would bring it instead." He handed his daughter a book. Wrapping it. The art of the package. I must say, a curious subject. I can think of curiouser ones. For example, a royal family in exile in America. Shall I elaborate? Max went to shake his head, but his head was so occupied all it did was sway. His Chaplin-esque mustache swayed with it. "I shan't beat around the bush, Lee Cherie. I've been wondering if your mental health could be described as sound." "By whom?" "Interested parties. Depends on their criteria. Responsibility to what? Leadership. And since when has leadership been a criterion for sanity? Or vice versa? Hitler was a gifted leader, even Nixon. Exhibit leadership qualities as an adolescent, they pack you off to law school for an anus transplant. If it takes, you go into government. That's what Bernard says. He says the reason so many assholes go into politics is that it's a homing instinct. At any rate, I understand that several romantics have started to follow in my footsteps. That makes me some kind of leader. At last count, 17 young women and 1 young man have locked themselves in their rooms in emulation of your lovesick indulgence. Monkeys and apes will attempt to copy any moron's routine. I wouldn't be too proud. But that is not my concern. I'm trying to ascertain if you are playing with a full deck. It may or may not be full, but at least it's my deck. The king looked around the attic. The room was duzzy. I'm going to guess that's a typo and there should be a teen, because D-U-S-Y is not a word. The room was dusty, dim, and bare. It was stuffy and smelled like a Skid Row gymnasium. A wino wrestling team might have recently practiced there. The king thought of his beautiful daughter living nude in that filthy chamber. He wondered if she didn't get splinters. "Lee Cherie," he said. It was almost a moan. "Lee Cherie, you're wasting your life." "My life has never been more full, Daddy, and it's seldom been happier. You may tell your parties that a life lived for love is the only sane life. Besides, I have other interests in here." Again, Max surveyed the room. A chamber pot, a frog box, a cot without bedding, what appeared to be a pack of cigarettes sitting on the sill of a blackened window. Other interests? He shuddered. He kissed her damp cheek. He left without telling her that he had been visited by agents of the revolution and that they wanted her to be queen when they won back their nation. Chapter 67. As he was leaving, King Max called back to her. "When do you plan to come down from here?" "When Bernard's released." "And what will you do then?" "Be with him." "Doing what? A husband and wife demolition team?" There was a long pause. "I don't know what his plans are, Daddy. Bye-bye." No, Lee Cherie hadn't a clue what Bernard would do when he got out of prison. He had failed to advise her of his plans, if any, or if they included her. After her father had gone, she took a moment to try to imagine what the woodpecker might do in life. But of only a few things could she be sure. There was no burger so soggy that he would not eat it. No tequila so mean that he would not drink it. No car so covered with bird shit and rust that he would not drive it around town. And if it were a convertible, he'd have the top down, even in rain, even in snow. There was no flag he would not desecrate. No true believer he would not mock. No song he wouldn't sing off key. No dental appointment he wouldn't break. No child he wouldn't do tricks for. No old person he wouldn't help in from the cold. No moon he wouldn't lie under. And, she hesitated to admit, no match he wouldn't strike. But what would he do? Perhaps he'll attempt to find out what happened to the golden ball, she thought, a little wistfully. God knows he'll stir the stew.